Welcome to the R3 podcast. I'm Alex Carver, R3 Senior Training Coordinator. Running a hotel is demanding at the best of times. But what happens when it enters administration? I'm joined by Peter Hales, Managing Director of M&T Hotel Management, to unpack exactly that. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So let's get down to brass tacks. For listeners who may not know M&T, what does a specialist hotel management company actually do? And where do you typically get involved when a hotel is in financial distress?
So simply, we run hotels on a day-to-day basis. So our regular work is running hotels for hotel investors. When we're helping in a insolvency situation, normally we're brought in advance of the action, and we liaise very closely with the insolvency practitioner to deliver services and run the hotel on a day-to-day basis. In distress matters, even more than normal, because a hotel's value is created or destroyed in the trading environment, it's key that we get that right. So that can be that we're brought in conjunction with an owner, lender, bank, etc. Our role is to stabilise the operation, preserve brand and guest proposition, protect cash, and create credible options for the insolvency practitioner and the stakeholders involved. We recently pulled together this into a product that we call M&T Revive, which is a modular set of services that we can deploy in various circumstances. And that can be revenue, distribution, marketing, procurement, wellness. So if the hotel's got a leisure club, a myriad of services that, depending on the complexity of the hotel, we bring the right people in to deliver that service.
When a hotel tips into administration, it's often a very intense moment for owners, lenders, staff, and guests alike. So when a hotel enters that administration, what is the primary concern?
The first one for me is safety. So having done this a few times now and learnt from everyone, and now know that whatever happens, there will be a googly thrown at you at some stage. So the first one for me is safety. So an example would be a hotel that we took over in an insolvency situation where the fire safety wasn't what it should be. So we identified that on day 2. So we'd already operated a hotel for 24 hours before picking this up. So the learning from that was on day 1 to either have a health and safety advisor. We work with Navitas, who are a health and safety advisor that we've worked with for a long time and partner with, and is to get them in on day 1 just to do a survey of the building. And that's fire safety, food safety, etc. In the example with fire safety, working with the insolvency practitioner to decide, do we keep the hotel open? The fire safety breaches were serious enough that we considered closing the hotel. But what we did was came up with a solution, did a risk assessment, and were comfortable enough with the things we put in place to keep the hotel operating. Another example would be a high-risk area like the pool, where we've taken a hotel over and the CCTV doesn't work, the staff aren't trained as lifeguards. So in that case, we just close the pool. Whilst it has a big impact on the trading of the hotel, that's already in a difficult situation if it's going into insolvency, it's the right thing to do, because sometimes, and in this example with the pool, the disgruntled ex-owner highlighted to the local environmental health officer that this was the situation. So they'd obviously been operating knowing that it wasn't where it should be. And the EHO turned up to inspect, and thankfully we'd already closed the leisure club, and so there wasn't an issue. We've had the same thing with the kitchen not being clean enough or fit enough to operate. And again, we've closed down the restaurant and bar operation and room service and events, etc., so that we're not putting the hotel's reputation or the insolvency practitioner or our reputation at risk.
The first days of any administration are usually where the tone for the whole process is set. What does the first 7 to 14 days look like? What matters most operationally, and what would you prioritize to stabilize the business?
Once you've got past the safety, the engine room of the hotel is team. So how do we stabilise the team? So it's assessing who you've got. So again, every circumstance has been different, where you walk in and there's a full team and there's a structure, and depending on why they've gone into the insolvency situation. Or you've had one where it's, say, a family business, and all of a sudden 4 or 5 of those family members that are working in the business are no longer around because they're disgruntled with what's happened with the bank taking action. So you lose a lot of knowledge, experience and manpower all of a sudden. So the first one is, who have you got? Are they actually in the building? We've had it where people are on holiday or just started holiday and they're out the country. So who have you got? And then it's getting the senior people together, reassuring them as much as possible. Now, before you go in, you've had lots of conversations with the insolvency practitioner to decide on what's likely to be the situation you're going into, what's the cash available, because you don't want to be making promises to people that later on you can't keep. So you've got to be circumspect in how you approach it. But you have talk lines for the team. So you'd start with the senior team members and then go into the wider team once you've got the leadership on side. So first of all is team. One of the key things we talk about is where payday is. Are the team owed money historically because of cash flow issues? Have they not been paid? Or if they have been paid, when is the next day they're paid? And, if you're going to get somebody to carry on working, do you know that you can then pay them in the future? So payday is one of the first things. So it's all around team in those first 24 hours once you've got past that safety issue. Then it's into what business is coming in. So one of the key things is future business that will make lots of noise. So if you're pulling the plug on a wedding, that's in local papers. If you're pulling the plug on a funeral, that's in local papers. So it's those, what are the sensitive bits of business in the next 5 days? You're probably going to look into the next 2 weeks, and sod's law is going to be that in 3 weeks' time, you've got a celebrity wedding, but it's picking out what's the immediate and can we deliver it? And that's, can we deliver it with the people we've got, the resources we've got, with the food we've got, etc. So it's then looking at what's coming in. Once you get past that initial fact-finding stage, getting the team around you, then it's into how you're going to structure this. So reporting cash flow with the insolvency practitioner. Then it's, do we have the kit to deliver the rooms that are booked? Do we have the food to be able to deliver? All that very practical thing. So we have a procurement department in Michelle's and Taylor, and it's bringing the right resources in and going back to that Revive product that we talked about, that depending on and this would be part of the fact finding with the insolvency practitioner before you go in, depending on the complexity of the business is who you need and who you need in day one. So, one of the things would be you probably have one of the commercial team who can go in, go through with the sales team who are coming in, who needs to be proactively contacted. Because again, if you've got a wedding on Saturday and this is a Wednesday, you've got to very quickly make a decision. Can it be delivered? Will it be delivered? Etc. And proactively reach out to the customers. And again, you go through the next 2 weeks to decide that. So because the lead person will be doing the safety, the cash flow, the leadership, the etc., having different resources, so say procurement or wellness, which again is one of the departments we've got. So looking at that, leisure club, golf, etc. So depending on the complexity of the business is who we bring in with us to help support in that initial 3-day period. And then that support will stay on after, when you're going into the first 4 to 14 days to decide what to do.
Administrations are always a team effort involving operators, advisors, and insolvency practitioners working together under time pressure. How do you work alongside administrators and their teams in practice? And what does good collaboration look like on a live appointment?
Loads of communication, and it's honesty up front, and it really is that fact finding where you can probably make an assumption about a business from outside looking in about structure and who's around and what they'll have. But then when you actually get in, whether it's actually there or whether the person is competent, etc., is the difficult bit. So it's the unknowns that are the real challenge. So lots of preparation, lots of communication, lots of talking before you actually go into the building and finding out what outcome is needed or wanted. Because again, that'll shape how you go in and doing it. And each one we've been involved in historically has been very different.
Unlike many other distressed businesses, hotels are still welcoming guests every single day whilst the restructuring is happening behind the scenes. How do you protect and rebuild guest confidence during an administration, particularly around service standards, reputation management, and online reviews?
Again, it's about what team members are still around, because you might go in and then find that somebody doesn't actually have access to online reviews because that person's either on holiday or is no longer in the business for various reasons. So it's operationally just having a very clear plan, and we have a structured approach going through each area of the business and picking out what do we need to do, who's going to do it, who from the hotel team's available to do it. If we haven't got somebody in the hotel team, liaising with the insolvency practitioner to decide what extra resources can be brought in, because again, there's a cost for those resources to bring extra resources in. So it's a very structured approach to what tasks need to be done, who can do it, who's available from the hotel team to do it, And then we go from there as to what to deliver. So guest confidence is very clear communication. So you'll go in with talk lines for the team, because again, it's a very difficult situation for the team to be in.
So in terms of the financials, what are the key things to look out for?
So initially is the ability to take cash, and where does that cash go? So one of the things that M&T offers is that we'll bring PDQs, credit card terminals in, so that we can take payments. It's directed into an M&T bank account. So again, all in advance, that's agreed. And how is the cash then swept back, etc. So how do you take cash initially? One that comes up that is now a factor is the online payments. So again, if somebody's paying online, where does that cash get directed to? So that's one to look at. So on day one, you'd have somebody from the finance team. What's the stock in hand? So again, depending on the time frame, how much planning you've had, how firmed up the day is, because you might have 3 or 4, 5 attempts the day that you start. We'd advise having a stock taker, because again, they can come in, count the food stock, the beverage stock, linen stock. So again, from that point of view of having somebody that says, oh, well, I've dropped off 3 cases of wine, it's not been paid for as per our invoice, it doesn't become yours till you're paid, I want it back. If on day one we've had a stock taker come in, we've established, was it there when we took over? Because it may not be. And that might be the evidence we need later on. So stock taker, someone from finance comes in, does all the cash floats. So more and more hotels are becoming cashless, but if they still do take cash, bringing all that cash together, who's got the keys to the safe is always an interesting one. So the very practical, what cash is on the premises? Can we bring it somewhere centrally, keep it safely? What does the insolvency practitioner want us to do with cash? Stocks have been taken, PDQs are in place so that we can still take payment. Establishing the deposits ledger. So what deposits have been taken? Is there any cash for those deposits? So far, we've not experienced where there is. So, that's one way you'll be getting people contacting you saying, I've paid a £10,000 deposit for my wedding. We expect the cash is still there. Can we please have it back immediately? How do you deal with that? Vouchers is another one. So is there a log of the vouchers that are out there? Because again, that can be a large cash commitment. So from a finance point of view, I would recommend having somebody just dedicated to that finance on that day. They can then start working on what's in the bank account, if anything. So that starts generating the cash flow, because at some stage, depending on the bank or institution that's presumably instigated the insolvency, they may have to be bankrolling that. What cash do they need to be putting in to operate it? One of the things that we've established previously is the decision between continuing to operate a hotel and its value. So the estimate we got from a broker was that a hotel that's thought to be worth 15 million, if you close it, it's 30 to 50% of its value is lost straight away, because obviously it's not a trading entity. So it's that decision of what's the cost to continue operating it versus what's the asset value impact of closing it. Because if you close it and then have to reopen it, you've got a reopening period, you've got getting the staff back together, the reputation together. If it's a golf course, you need to get the golf course back into condition, all those other factors that come into it. So one of the initial finance things is what cash flow is going to be needed to keep it going. As I've said before, payday is the key one for me. And it's the first one we ask is, where was payday? Have they been paid? Is anything owed? When's the next payday? If there is, what cash is available? And get commitment. If somebody's going to carry on working, they will definitely get paid. So that finance element is key, and having the right person around to help at a senior enough level to understand all the different moving parts of a hotel. So very structured plan, looking at what needs to be done, who's available from the hotel team to do it, because from an efficiency point of view, if they know the business, then it's quicker and easier for them to deliver it. If that resource isn't available, liaising with the insolvency practitioner to say, can extra resources be found and brought in, which is something that we'll assist with. That's agreed. And then it's what tasks need to be done, working our way through them in a systematic and structured way, communicating all the time with the insolvency practitioner about where we're going. One of the key things, again, it comes back to the complexity of the business that you're dealing with, because you've got customers that are shocked. How do you deal with them? So it's giving the talk lines and the information to the team members or the people you've drafted in to help as to how to speak to the customer. So deposits is one that really comes up in a lot of the situations we've dealt with. So somebody's paid, in some cases, a very large deposit, say for a wedding, and they're looking at that deposit isn't there anymore because depending on the situation, the cash might not have been ring fenced, the cash is no longer there. Now, again, it's how you deal with that is speaking to the insolvency practitioner, having a very clear view on what can and can't be said, having scripts that the team can talk from, also email templates to share the position. So that's the best way to safeguard reputation, is that difficult situation, the team are upset, so difficult for them to deal with. The customer is shocked, annoyed and upset, especially if you've got your wedding coming up on a Saturday. How do you deal with that? In that situation, if, say, the hotel doesn't have a general manager who would normally pick that up, who from Michelle's and Taylor can pick that up, or even some cases are working very closely with the insolvency practitioner who will pick the phone up to the guest, because you can't give them every insurance they want. If they've handed over £20,000 and that £20,000 isn't there anymore, it's a really tough and difficult and emotional situation. So it's very, very intense for the first week, 2 weeks, but I must stress that's depending on the complexity of the business. If it's a business that's predominantly rooms, not lots of deposits. The other one is gift vouchers, that again, you'll have a volume of people that will be phoning saying, I've got a £100 gift voucher, how can I cash it in? Because they want to quickly redeem it. Again, so that's understanding the potential for volume of calls, how calls are handled, and that's the best way to deal with reputation. You won't deal with it perfectly because just the sheer volume and the fact that people are upset and therefore unreasonable, or, it's a very difficult situation for them. But it's having that very clear plan going into it of how everybody will communicate and work together.
Hotels are ultimately people businesses, and uncertainty can be particularly difficult for frontline staff. People are often the make or break in a hotel. How do you handle staffing, morale, and retention when there's uncertainty, and what messaging works best with teams?
Honesty. Some people in the team may have been through something before, or it might be just completely new for them. So it's deciding beforehand what will be said to the team, speaking to the leadership team first, so to get them on side in a smaller group, because the team will look to the leaders for their reassurance. So if you can get the leaders on side, that's great. Then it's a team meeting, and again, that's a joint with the insolvency practitioner, M&T as the operator, and then potentially the bank or the institution that may have brought this insolvency around. Having a united front, being as honest as you can, because especially if you speak to them on day one, you might not have all the information, you might not have all the facts. So it's being honest, saying, we're still fact finding. This is what we'll have. This is when we'll next communicate with you. Making sure you cover all the people in the hotel, because it's 24/7 business. So, if you're going to go in and speak to the team at 3:00, then you also speak to the team at 11:00 at night that are coming in on duty. You have one in the morning, etc. So recognise it's a 24-hour business. Try and speak to every team member. Have frequently asked questions that people can go into. That also gives us a great question. We'll take that away, and then we can issue frequently asked questions with the responses. So it gets out to the team. Having a clear plan how you communicate with the team. Is there a system for communicating with the team? Is there a time and attendance system that communicates with them? And getting that message out there, trying to reassure them. Payday thing is normally one that comes up very early. So having a very clear plan on that. Have they been paid? Are they owed anything? Their first question will be, well, if I turn up tomorrow, will I actually get paid for it? So again, a lot of them won't understand or know about an insolvency situation and what reassurance the insolvency practitioner can give them. So getting that message across very quickly, who's around, talking to them, reassuring them, and then frequent communication, but everything done in partnership with the insolvency practitioner, so you've got an aligned message throughout.
Another key pressure point during an administration is the supply chain, where confidence can evaporate very quickly. How do you manage creditor pressure whilst keeping the hotel trading, especially for critical services like utilities, food and beverage, linen, and maintenance?
So we've got a procurement team. So again, as part of the service M&T provide, we'd be involving that team. Somebody like the linen company, changing linen isn't easy to do. So it's proactively picking the phone up, saying to them, this is the situation. Will you carry on delivering? What reassurance can the insolvency practitioner about payment from the point that we're taking over? Just great communication, really, and just talking to the person. As a plan B, Mr. Taylor has our central contractors that we use for all our hotels, and we have accounts set up. So again, say a food supplier stops providing food because of previous debts, doesn't want to carry on working in the hotel. It's having plan B suppliers that we can tap into. Again, that would be discussed and arranged before we go in so that we can reassure our suppliers and partners, the M&T supplier and partners, that they are going to get paid and that it's on a basis of, because obviously credit's more difficult, etc., that it's all sorted out. But there are key suppliers that you can't change immediately. Linen would be one. So it's what stock have you got? The other key thing with suppliers is that a lot of them, until the goods are actually paid for, they don't actually belong to the hotel. So you'll have people turning up saying, well, I've delivered 100 kilos of fillet of beef yesterday. You've not paid for it. I want it back. It's having, again, a prearranged process of, we'll establish ownership. Once we've done that, it'll go through the insolvency practitioner and we'll get it back. Now, in that example, it's perishable. So, if it's 3 cases of wine in the cellar, it can sit there for a while until you sort everything out. But again, it's that communication, having somebody that's working on that in a dedicated way so that somebody deals with those things that come up, having a security plan of, we've had suppliers come in that hadn't been paid and come in and actually damage the infrastructure of the hotel overnight. So it's those sorts of things of assessing the situation as things come up during the day. Do we need security on site? Is there a risk? Because in that case, they came in, they'd been working on the hot water system. They damaged the hot water system, so the hotel didn't have hot water for 3 days. And as I say, each insolvency event will bring up different challenges, and it's trying to understand the nuances of who's disgruntled, who's been disenfranchised, etc., to assess where the risks are in the business. I would like to also say we have been involved in ones that are very simple. You're going into a business where it's very structured, but the majority, because they're in this situation, there is complication. And as I've said earlier, it's that complexity of the operation that will make whether you've got swimming pools, golf, etc. One of the suppliers that we've dealt with is that if you've leased equipment, so say golf courses, that because it's on lease and that lease maybe not have been paid for because of cash flow, that they turn up with a low loader to come and recover their equipment. And again, it's about wherever possible preempting that communication. So approaching the supplier, having a really honest and frank dialogue with them, the reassurance from the insolvency practitioner, and then coming up with a plan for them, rather than waiting for them to arrive and maybe in the early hours take you by surprise.
Once stability is established, attention usually turns to the levers that can quickly improve cash flow and performance. What operational and commercial levers can realistically move that dial fast? For example, pricing, strategy, channel mix, cost control, cash discipline.
So you're sort of getting into the medium term. The immediate on commercial levers will be something like, say, booking.com. If they've not been paid, will they turn the hotel off from a distribution point of view? If it's a branded hotel, again, what will the brand continue to deliver? So again, it's contacting the brand. So initially it's, okay, what's still working? What's still coming in? The other part of that is, even if it's coming in, can you then actually service it? Because have you got the team around? Have you got, say, the linen to put the rooms on, etc., etc. So lots of initial, what do we do? How do we do it? And then as you get into the medium term, we've got a full commercial team. So sales, revenue, marketing, wellness that can drive the commerciality of the hotel. And it's bringing those experts in to say, right, okay, there's an opportunity here. But again, it's assessing how long is it likely that this hotel will be in this situation for? What's the circumstance? Will it be short term? We've had one where we've now been involved for 2.5 years because they're looking to sell the hotel, can't do that. So we're working closely. So then that becomes more of a normal operation and we're working closely with them in more of a normal way. But the immediate is what's been turned off. Can we turn it back on? If it's not been turned off yet, can we keep it on? Then you move into capital, probably more safety initially. And then if there's any other, it's what can we keep working? Or say the swimming pool's not working properly or the air conditioning is not working properly. Again, working with the insolvency practitioner closely to say, okay, is there cash available? If there is, can we spend it in this area and prioritize as much as we possibly can? It really is case by case, and it's having that experience from previous to understand you've got to act quickly, but always liaising with the insolvency practitioner.
As always, people are baying for war stories and real life examples. Can you share any real war stories of hotels and administrations you've supported? What the key challenges were, what actions you took, and what outcomes were achieved for stakeholders?
I think I've touched on somebody breaking into the hotel to sabotage it. So that would be one. Again, that's been in more than one situation. We had one where they came in and drained the pool overnight. So you walked in and the pool was virtually empty. So it's assessing that risk of who could be a bad actor and what would their motivation be for it. So if you've taken the hotel or site, depending, if it's a leisure club or etc., off somebody, are they going to be disgruntled? If they are disgruntled, the insolvency practitioner and M&T aren't the guilty ones, but we're the face of what's happened. So the team will see that, customers will see that, and the people that have left the business because of what's happened will see us as potentially the enemy. So it's anticipating who are they, what are they like, if it's a more corporate organisation, how will they work with us, etc. But if it's a family, there's more emotion involved. So it's assessing that risk. So you've got those sorts of things. You've got the people that turn up and want their goods back. So again, very clear plan, very calm communication. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. As I say, if it is perishable, then you probably act quicker. But what's going to happen? We've had team members where they thought they were going to be not going to be paid for what they've done. So they decided to take things away with them in lieu of getting payment. So again, from a security point of view, do you have security? If you're doing bag searches or person searches as people are leaving the premises, how that feels for the team. So again, you're assessing the impact of that versus the risk of what can be taken away. But for the first 24 hours, you may want security around, even if it's just sort of to prevent people doing that sort of thing. We had one case where they had a boot room with lots of barber coats and somebody had 3 coats under their coat that they were going to walk out with. And we could see it under their coat and they denied, but every single one brings something up that you don't expect. So it's having that expertise, the knowledge, the people around, and being able to call on people to actually respond to it. Because however well you prepare, everyone we've done, there's always something where you go, well, I didn't see that one coming.
And finally, for someone doing their first hotel administration, what's the one key piece of advice you'd like to give them?
Own M&T. So no, it's getting the expert help because it's so different to normal hotel operations. So we've done it in the past because of, say, we've had a relationship with the bank. So they've asked the insolvency practitioner to use ourselves. So that's how we first started doing it. And when we went into it, we didn't know what we didn't know. So it is somebody that's got experience of it. I would suggest somebody that has the war stories, has gone through it, that if it's the insolvency practitioner's first, because it's a live 24/7 business. So it's that preparation. So getting the right person working with you in advance to go through the things that we've been talking about today of, right, okay, how complex is it? What are the moving parts? Why is it happening? What outcome do you want? Where are we going? And you have that in advance and right, let's have the scripts prepared, have as much prepared as you possibly can going into it. So that's insolvency practitioner. And again, that'll help build a relationship between the insolvency practitioner and the experts. Because if there's that trust, when you're moving at 100 miles an hour, which you do go into in that first 3-day period, then hopefully that trust begins there. And we've got insolvency practitioners that we've worked before that we're their go-to person now. And even if it's not that they get the gig in advance of getting the gig, they'll phone us and say, what do you know about this? So use somebody like ourselves, phone us, say, this is the situation. We can give the insight that we have or the perception we have because we've gone into it saying, oh, well, it's a branded hotel, big corporate machine behind it. It should have this in place. And then when you actually get there, it doesn't. And that's why it's in the situation it's in, but I would stress we have had them where everything's fine. And for a technicality, they're in this situation. So it's it's a different proposition, but prepare, build relationship. And then when you execute, just loads of communication all the time, have the right people around, from a cost point of view, because of the situation, we find that it's, oh, well, this is what we can afford to pay. And that might not be the right approach given the complexity of it. So the bit that as M&T we've learned is this is what we think you need, and this is what it's going to cost you to do it properly. And then you then get into, right, okay, what can be afforded? What's the end result that you want, etc. So get that support, not from day one, but as soon as you possibly can, that you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing. And that includes to exit as well. So you'll have the preparation, the actual immediate day, the recovery. Depending on what is happening, you can be in there for quite a long time. So again, that's just the forming, norming, storming, performing. So once you're just norming, and then to exit. So how do we help with the exit? And it's getting the right partner to help you all the way through that journey.
Peter, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Pleasure.
With thanks to Peter Hales and the team at M&T. If you would like to learn more about trading administration, join us on the 15th of June in London for a hands-on one-day course led by industry experts Neil Spate and Max Krasner. You can find full details on the R3 website, and podcast listeners can use the code PODCAST for a 5% discount. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and bye for now.